Hi, and welcome to today's Daily Chronicle. Today is Monday, September 22nd, 2025. UK, Canada, and Australia recognize a Palestinian state despite U.S. opposition. UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer and Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney meet before the start of the G7 subunit at Parliament Hill on June 15th, 2025, in Ottawa, Canada. Canada, the UK, Australia, and other countries on Sunday announced they were formally recognized Palestine as a state. A move that has long been opposed by the US and Israel. We recognized the state of Israel more than 75 years ago as a homeland for the Jewish people. Today, we join over 150 countries who recognize a Palestinian state also. A pledge to the Palestinian and Israeli people that there can be a better future. UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer said in a speech on Sunday. Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney said Sunday recognizing Palestine as a state empowers those who seek peaceful coexistence and the end of Hamas. There is in no way legitimizes terrorism, nor is it any reward for it. Furthermore, it in no way compromises Canada's steadfast support for the state of Israel, its people, and their security that can only ultimately be guaranteed through the achievement of a comprehensive two-state solution, Carney said in a statement. Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese said Sunday that opening embassies and establishing diplomatic relations will be considered as the Palestinian Authority makes progress on its commitment to reform. Already, crucial work is underway across the international community to develop a credible peace plan that enables the reconstruction of Gaza, builds the capacity of the state of Palestine, and guarantees the security of Israel, Albanese said in a statement. The designation from U.S. allies follows Starmer's meeting with President Trump last week. After their meeting, Trump said he wanted the war in Gaza to end, but disagreed with plans to recognize Palestine as a state. I have a disagreement with the Prime Minister on that score, Trump said during a press conference. World leaders will meet for the UN General Assembly on Tuesday, with more countries including France. Expected to formally recognize Palestine as a state in coming days. More than 140 of 193 UN member states already recognize Palestine as a state. French President Emmanuel Macron said in July France would announce the designation at the assembly, posting on X. That recognizing Israel and Palestine will contribute to the security of all in the region. Portugal's Ministry of Foreign Affairs also announced on Friday that it would formally recognize Palestine as a state. Displaced Palestinians flee northern Gaza Strip by foot in vehicles, carrying their belongings along the coastal road near Wadi Gaza, Saturday, September 20th, 2025. Israeli and Palestinian reactions. News that countries had formally recognized Palestine as a state was praised by Palestinian officials. Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas stressed in multiple statements that it will help pave the way for a two-state solution and allow Palestinians to live side by side with the state of Israel in security, peace, and good neighborliness. In the Israeli-occupied West Bank, reaction among Palestinians was mixed. Sarah Mohammed, a 20-year-old computer engineering student at Bizert University near Ramallah, told NPR she wants to see more concrete action. We want people to speak up to change something. Not to just say it and move on, she said. The muted mood in the West Bank, where there are now more than 1,200 Israeli manned checkpoints and gates, making travel very difficult, is a far cry from celebrations that broke out back in 2012 when the UN upgraded Palestine to observer state status. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu denounced the country's new designation, saying on Sunday in a message posted on X that there will be no Palestinian state west of the Jordan. I have a clear message to those leaders who recognize a Palestinian state after the terrible massacre of October 7th. You are giving a huge reward to terrorism, Net said. The response to the latest attempt to impose a terrorist state on the U.S., on us, in the heart of our country, will be given after my return from the U.S. We will wait. And as the countries announced the recognition, Israel launched an attack on Gaza City, killing more than 40 people, according to the Associated Press. Wildfire smoke is killing Americans. A new study quantifies how much. Wildfire has long been a part of life for many Americans, but recently, as wildfires have become larger, more destructive, and longer lasting, a new risk has come into focus for millions across the country: wildfire smoke. People in the East, Midwest, and South have been forced to deal with smoke in recent years. Many for the first time. Now, a new study quantifies the health impacts of all that smoke. The analysis, published this week in Nature, found that wildfire smoke already contributes to some 40,000 deaths each year in the U.S. But as climate change, many fire-prone parts of North America, hotter and drier, fire activity, and by extension, wildfire smoke, could increase significantly, leading to many more Americans being exposed to the dangers and potentially fatal levels of smoke. The numbers are quite striking, says Ming Kuo, a climate and public health scientist at Stony Brook University and the lead author of the study. By the middle of the century, Stony Brook University and the lead author of the study, smoke levels could be double or triple the average wildfire smoke concentrations experienced across the country today. "2020 was one of the smokiest years. In recent memories," he says, driven by a record-breaking western wildfire season that burned some 10 million acres. Within a few decades, the amount of smoke could have become the norm. Limiting future climate change could curtail some of the impacts, the study found, but more smoke is almost certainly a future reality. Yu Ma, an epidemiologist at the University of California, San Diego, was not involved in the research, but led a similar study last year. She says the new results suggest Americans are going to need to think of ways to live with a smokier future. Adaptation becomes an important topic. She says, we need to explore the types of adaptation strategies are most useful, like helping people filter their air at home or developing a network of clean air centers that become hubs during periods of smoke. The Climate Smoke Health Connection, the analysis Nature linked 3 different computer models, all trained with real-world data. The first model looks at the link between Earth's changing climate and wildfire activity across North America. When temperatures are high, explains atmospheric scientist Loretta Mickley of Harvard University, the atmosphere is thirstier. It sucks more moisture out of any available source, from lakes to soil to vegetation. Mickley was not involved in the study. Drier vegetation, in turn, is more likely to burn, and burn in ways that can exacerbate wildfires. The Model Q and his colleagues used in the analysis aligns with previous research, finding that a hotter planet leads to more fires and therefore more smoke. Then they used a previously developed model that looks at how smoke actually travels across the country and where it lofts high in the atmosphere, less likely to impact on the ground pollution, and where it comes into contact with the communities. The next steps was to compare the smoke exposure each U.S. county experienced between 2006 and 2019. The team could see how that exposure changed over time and how the death rate changed alongside the shifting smoke burden. The results were clear. When smoke exposures was high, more people died, and the impacts lingered, with the death rate remaining elevated for as many as 3 years beyond the smoke. We don't see smoke-related written on the death certificate, says Marshall Burke, a climate expert at Stanford University, another author of the paper. We see heart attacks or COPD or some other complication from chronic disease. But we know from decades of research, and what we find again in this study, is that breathing dirty air just exacerbates a range of things that make us sick. Wildfire smoke can wreak havoc on the human body. The tiniest particles can even penetrate the bloodstream, where they drive inflammation that can last long after the smoke has disappeared, or cross the blood-brain barrier and embed into the brain. The impacts, researchers have found, can worsen health problems like heart disease and brain disease, and can even contribute to premature death. Smoke particles tend to be more toxic than your average urban pollution, Mickley says, and because it often arrives in thick clouds, it can be even more dangerous. The future is smokier. The researchers figured out that smoke already affects tens of thousands of people in average each year. But the future their models show could be even smokier. By the middle of the century, wildfire activity is likely to increase across the country, particularly in the western U.S. as well as in Canada and Mexico. Increases anywhere in North America can influence smoke exposure within the U.S. Annual smoke exposure, in turn, could hit levels seen in what we currently think of as bad smoke years, like 2020. Even with aggressive climate action that drastically decreases fossil fuel burning, the primary driver of global warming, smoke levels are less likely to increase substantially, doubling by the middle of the century. With less effective climate action, the levels could triple. Wildfire smoke deaths, by extension, could rise from an estimated 40,000 today to some 70,000 people in the year in the U.S. Crystal McClure, a wildfire smoke expert at the independent research group Sonoma Tech, says the findings could even underestimate the potential health consequences. Fires that burn into urban areas often produce smoke that contains more toxins, heavy metals, and other dangerous byproducts. The study didn't explicitly include urban burns. Overall, Burke says, the analysis confirms that climate change will continue to take a toll on Americans, causing tens of thousands of lives a year. Converted to economic losses, the health toll from climate-worsened wildfire smoke alone will exceed the economic damages the U.S. government currently considers attributable to climate change, from infrastructure losses to lost work hours, according to the analysis. This finding basically doubles our best-known quantitative evidence of the impacts of a change in climate on the U.S. population, Burke says. Social media is shattering America's understanding of Charlie Kirk's death. Crime scene tape surrounds the perimeter of Utah Valley University after Turning Point USA CEO and co-founder Charlie Kirk was found shot and killed Saturday, September 13th, 2025, in Orem, Utah. Social media is promoting different views of why the shooter acted. When Vice President Vance hosted an episode of conservative activist Charlie Kirk podcast on Monday, he blamed an incredibly destructive moment of left-wing extremism for Kirk's assassination. The same night, talk show host Jimmy Kimmel said the MAGA gang was desperately trying to characterize the character as anything other than one of them. Kimmel was suspended indefinitely for his comments, raising concerns about free speech. The disparate statements from the conservative vice president and liberal talk show host revealed a troubling fact, that there is a deep schism on how Americans understand the assassination that took place a little more than a week ago. Black tape crosses out the Mickey Mouse t-shirt during a demonstration in response to the suspension of Jimmy Kimmel's late-night show outside the Walt Disney Studios in Burbank, California. Jimmy Kimmel comments about the shooter sparked an outcry in the political right. The gap is being widened by social media. More than half of U.S. adults now get their news sometimes or more often from social media platforms. And those platforms are fragmenting how Americans view what is happening. American politics has long been home to conspiracies and even fracturing of understanding around events, said Nicole Hemmer, a professor of history at Vanderbilt University. What's new is the speed at which all of this is shared, the ease of access that people have to it, and the algorithmic push, she said. I have too seen the most horrible thing, and you need to see this too. Social media dismantled the act of violence that took Charlie Kirk's life in a matter of minutes. Kirk had just opened his event at Utah Valley University, and many students were filming with their phones when a single shot rang out. Within the hour, videos of his death flooded the web. The images were uploaded and re-uploaded by news outlets, independent journalists, influencers, and others. From a forensic perspective, the images built up a remarkably consistent version of major news events, just moments after it had happened. Multiple videos, together with a statement from the university, suggested the sniper had lain prone on the roof of the Lossie Center, roughly 135 yards away from his target. The rifle shot rang out at 12:23 local time. The graphic images of Kirk's death got millions of views and thousands of repostings on sites including X, Instagram. And that was exactly the point, Hemmer said. For those who were filming, sharing the content is part of the processing. It's like, I have seen the most horrible thing, and you need to see this too. Because this is the only way you're going to grasp what happened. But Hemmer added, the choice of others to reshare is driven by the fact that social media rewards this kind of extreme content. Many who reshared the image are making money and gaining followers from it. She notes, that's just part of the incentive structured media today. Those initial images of the event drive engagement online, but they don't associate research professor. At the McCourt School of Public Policy at Georgetown University. When something happens, we go to our phone, we start hitting that refresh button, waiting to see the latest bit of information at the top of our feed, she said. There's an exception that new information should be available to us every time we open that app. Social media is spreading fear, added Darren Linville, co-director of the Media Forensics Hub at Clemson University. To abate that fear, people are hungry for information. When we can't get it, we're going to fill that void with something. Influencers take cues from platforms' incentives. Enter the influencers. The earliest takes on platforms like X are the most likely to gain traction through algorithmic searches, which means they can be monetized and used to grow audiences. That creates a pre-serve incentive for people to just be the first, even if they don't have any information to add. Said Di Resta. Indeed, prominent influencers were quick to provide theories, or at the very least context, depending on their political lens. Some reminded their followers that Kirk had been in conflict with a far-right group called the Groyabers and suggested the shooter itself was evidence of the growing militarization of the left. Later, the additional details emerged. Still others said the shooter was motivated by nihilistic video game culture. Each of these narratives exists with different communities, Linville said. As new details emerged, the communities bent them to their respective narratives. The arrest of the alleged shooter, 22-year-old Tyler Robinson, has done little to quell the debate over why he acted. After 22-year-old Tyler Robinson surrendered to authorities, some began highlighting his upbringing in an apparently conservative household. Others looked for clues in his Halloween costumes. On the right, many pointed to Robinson's personal relationship with his roommate, who court documents say is a biological male in the process of transitioning genders. Perhaps nowhere were the fight over meaning as pronounced as with the cryptic messages etched into the bullet cartridge of the shooter. Right-wing influencers quickly cast them as a clear sign of the shooter's presumed leftist ideology, while others pointing out their roots in extremely online video game culture. A more complex view emerges. The day after Vance and Kimmel made their comments, a charging document filed by the authorities in Utah told his own story of the killer. Robinson had grown up in a conservative household, but had started to lean to the political left, with a specific focus on gays and trans rights. According to the document, his mother allegedly told law enforcement that those changing views did appear to be a motivating factor behind shooting Kirk, who regularly attacked the trans community online and on his podcast. The guy, Charlie Kirk, spreads too much hate, Robinson said, according to the document. At the same time, assertions by right-wing influencers that Robinson was part of an alleged larger, violent movement of the political left are so far unfounded. Robinson acted alone, according to the charging document, and nobody, not even his roommate and partner, appeared to be aware that he had decided to kill Kirk. Text messages in the charging document also show that he had only decided to conduct the assassination a bit over a week before he carried it out. Further suggesting he was a lone actor. Finally, the cryptic messages on the bullet cartridges did indeed seem to be an attempt to gain status online. The expletive messages are mostly a big meme, Robinson texted to his partner, according to court documents. If I see notices bulge woo on Fox News, I might have a stroke. Hemmer said that the picture painted by the charging document and undercuts both words of Vance and Jimmy Kimmel in the past week. The shooter was not one of them, as something Kimmel implied with his joke about the MAGA gang. But equally, there is no evidence that he is part of a wider movement of left-wing extremism. Hemmer also notes, however, a late-night host making a factually dubious statement in a monologue is not the same as mobilizing the power of the state against political enemies. But nuance fails in online platforms designed to boost the sustained engagement and promote content likely to provoke a reaction from users. Already, social media pundits on the left are questioning whether the text and interviews in the charging documents are real. Meanwhile, those on the right are agitating to declare left-wing activists as terrorists. Behind it all, Linville said, the technology is fueling an ancient human instinct. People want to believe what they want to believe.